My mom told me to give up my baby because she wanted me to give it to my sister as a wedding gift. But what she did next still haunts me every time I think about it. I'm 27 years old, living with my mom and my younger sister Claire in a small town in Oregon. My dad passed away right after I graduated college, and ever since then, I've been the one holding the family together. Claire has always been frail, often sick, and mom always said, "You're the big sister, you have to give in to her sometimes." I broke up with my boyfriend 2 months ago when I found out I was pregnant, and he made it clear he wanted nothing to do with being a father. I accepted the idea of being a single mom, even though I was terrified and had nothing certain to hold on to. But just as I was starting to come to terms with it, mom asked me to give it all up, to give up my right to be a mother. She didn't say it in a harsh or demanding tone. She said it like she was talking about changing dinner plans. "Claire can't have kids. This is her chance to be a mother, don't you see?" I used to think I was the strong daughter, at least stronger than Claire. I've been working since I was 18, paid off my tuition, barely ever asked mom for anything. But now she's using that very strength to pressure me into carrying something that doesn't belong to me. Claire doesn't know. She's busy preparing for her upcoming wedding, all excited about picking flowers and choosing a dress. I watch her from a distance, see her beaming with joy, and my heart tightens. Should I destroy that happiness? I named the baby Bean, because it's tiny like a little bean, peaceful and warm inside me. Every night I whisper to it while lying in bed, gently stroking my belly, "Mommy's here. I'll protect you." Now I'm not sure if I can keep that promise. On my desk, there's still an old photo frame. Claire and me sitting side by side in princess dresses, laughing brightly. Dad took that picture during our last family trip, right before he found out he had cancer. I looked at it, then looked at mom, and suddenly, the past felt meaningless compared to the present. She walked over and placed a brown envelope on the table, without saying a word. I opened it. It was an appointment slip for an abortion consultation, along with a pre-filled consent form with my name on it. At the bottom, Tuesday, 9:00 a.m. As if everything had already been arranged, all that was left was my signature. I clutched the paper tightly, hearing it crinkle like a small, desperate protest. I sat down on the bed, trying to breathe, but the air in the room felt suffocating. At that moment, I knew I had to choose, become a mother, or become the sacrificial big sister. I walked into the bathroom, locked the door, still holding the appointment slip. I sat down on the toilet lid, curling up like a wounded little animal. I didn't cry out loud, just heard my heartbeat pounding like a funeral drum in a quiet procession. I thought of my dad, and imagined what he would do if he were still alive. He once told me I was the only light left after the storm of his life. And now, mom was trying to snuff out that light, for another child. That night I didn't sleep. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, the soft yellow light casting shadows on the cracked walls. I remembered all the times Claire had a fever and mom stayed up all night to take care of her, while I found my own medicine. I've gotten used to being left behind. But this time, it's a whole life being left behind with me. I pulled out the pregnancy test from my drawer, still showing 2 clear red lines, though they'd faded yellow with time. I placed it next to the first ultrasound photo, a tiny blurry dot, but to me, it was an entire world. That world is growing inside me, even as mom tries to smother it. The next morning, mom acted like the conversation had never happened. She made breakfast, reminded me to pick up more candles for Claire's engagement party. I sat down at the table, staring at my spoon. My distorted reflection looked back at me. I didn't tell anyone, until I texted Rachel, my best friend from high school. "I'm pregnant, and my mom wants me to give the baby to my sister." She was typing for a long time, then finally replied, "Are you okay? I'm coming over." Rachel showed up with a bag of donuts and hugged me for a long time. She didn't say much, just handed me a small leather-bound notebook. "Write it down, write everything." I opened to the first page and wrote, "Baby, I'm sorry, but I won't let you disappear so easily." Claire came home in the afternoon, carrying a sample bouquet, cheeks glowing pink. "Hey sis, can you help me choose between lavender and baby's breath?" I nodded, but my heart was stabbing itself. She didn't know mom was planning to use the child inside me to fill the emptiness inside her. That night, I dreamed I gave birth in an all-white room, but no one was there. I heard a baby cry, but when I turned around, Claire was carrying it away, smiling brightly. I screamed after my baby, but no one heard me. I woke up in the middle of the night, my back drenched in sweat. My hands instinctively wrapped around my belly, empty, cold. I whispered, "Baby, I don't know what to do, but I'm trying." I stepped outside early in the morning, before anyone else in the house was awake. The air was crisp, and I felt grateful for the cold. It kept me alert. I needed to breathe in a space my mother couldn't reach. I walked to the clinic 15 minutes from home, every step heavy like I was carrying the weight of the world. But not to get an abortion. I just wanted to hear the heartbeat one more time, to know that the baby was alive, really here with me. The nurse smiled as I lay down on the ultrasound table. "There it is," she said gently, turning the screen toward me. A tiny flicker. Steady, resilient, the heartbeat of Bean. I couldn't hold back my tears. I buried my face in my hands. Suddenly, everything felt too real, no longer just a thought or a checkbox on a form. This was my child, and that heartbeat was echoing right beneath my own. As I left the clinic, I stopped by my favorite used bookstore. I bought a blank journal with a hard blue cover, the same kind as the first diary my dad gave me. I decided I would write to Bean day by day. When I got home, Mom was watering the plants on the porch. She looked up and squinted when she saw the clinic envelope in my hand. "You went through with it, right?" she asked, emotionless. I didn't answer. I walked straight inside, closed my bedroom door, heart pounding like I'd just escaped something terrifying. I didn't know how long I could keep this silence intact. Claire called me that afternoon. She said she'd found a new wedding dress and wanted me to try it on with her. She was still cheerful, still believed I'd be the perfect big sister at her wedding. She didn't know there was a secret growing inside me, a secret with a heartbeat. That night, Mom left a tray of food on my desk, with a small folded note. "Don't let this go too far. Claire won't be able to handle it if you don't help her." I picked up the note and tried to crush it in my fist, but my hands were shaking too much to hold it tight. I stuffed the crumpled paper into the drawer and slammed it shut so hard it thudded against the wood. That small sound echoed in my head like a warning. Mom wouldn't stop at words. And I realized, if I didn't push back, she would script my entire future exactly the way she wanted. I sat at my desk, opened the blue journal, and wrote the first line. "Bean, today I decided not to give you up. Even if the whole world turns against me, I'll hold on to you." I wrote slowly, each letter anchoring the strength I was struggling to keep inside. And for the first time in days, I felt a sense of grounding. My child was my anchor. The next morning, I got a message from an unknown number. "I'm with the adoption agency. Your mother spoke to us preliminarily. When would you be available to talk?" I stared at the screen, stunned, my heart pounding so hard I couldn't breathe. Mom, had she really gone that far? I walked into the kitchen. She was slicing apples for Claire, smiling like nothing had happened. I placed the phone on the table, letting the message light up clearly in front of her. She glanced at it and said calmly, "I'm just making preparations. You need help making the right decision." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. To her, my pregnancy was just a situation to manage, not a sacred life. And she still believed she was doing the right thing. That night, I snuck out to the balcony with a blanket and my journal. I sat on the cold wooden floor. The sky was empty of stars, but I stared up as if searching for a message from my dad. If he were still alive, would he let Mom turn me into a surrogate for my own sister? Rachel called while I was scribbling incoherent thoughts into my journal. "I have an idea," she said, voice quiet but firm. "I know a lawyer, no lawsuits or anything, she'll just tell you what your rights are." I went silent for a few seconds, then asked, I have rights?" That question escaped my lips so raw, so painful, like I had never truly believed I was allowed to have any. Rachel simply said, "You're the mother. That's the biggest right there is." Her words echoed in my head all night. I curled up and cradled my belly, imagining the heartbeat inside. Beneath this thin skin was another heart, learning how to survive with a mother who had never truly been protected herself. The next morning, I decided to call the lawyer Rachel recommended. My hands trembled as I dialed, like I was doing something wrong, even though all I wanted was to keep my baby. A warm, calm voice answered. "This is Amelia. I'm here to help you understand that you're not alone." I told her everything, slowly, brokenly, like I was untangling years of knotted thread. She didn't interrupt, just asked one thing when I paused. "Have you signed anything yet?" I shook my head, and that's when I realized I was crying. Because for the first time someone was asking me, not my mother. "You have the right to keep your baby. No one can force you to give them up, not your mother, not your sister," Amelia said. Each word felt like unlocking a door I thought had long been sealed by fear. I nodded over and over again, as if clinging to that sentence would keep me from being swept back into their vortex. That night, I hid in my room and looked over the paperwork Mom had given me. The abortion form was still there, untouched, with no trace of my handwriting. I picked up a pen and wrote a small note in the corner. "No one else can be this baby's mother but me." Claire knocked on my door late at night. Her voice was soft, slightly hesitant. "Hey, have you been avoiding me?" I gripped the blanket in my hands, trying to hide my swollen red eyes. I didn't know how to look at her anymore. She sat beside me, gently brushing her fingers across the framed wedding photo on my desk. "I know something's wrong, but can you talk to me about it?" I looked at her, and for one brief second, I almost blurted everything out. But I stayed silent. Not because I didn't trust Claire, but because I was afraid. Afraid that if she knew, she'd choose to believe Mom over me. Afraid that, to her, the baby growing inside me would only ever be her last chance at motherhood. After she left, I opened my journal and wrote, "Today your grandmother tried to bring in strangers to take you away from me, and she truly believes that's love." The page soaked up my tears, but I kept writing until the end. "Sweetheart, I won't let anyone else define love for me." I laid my hand on my belly and closed my eyes, listening. There was no sound but my own heartbeat. But I believed you were still there, whispering something tiny and invisible. Maybe it was, "Mommy, I'm not going anywhere either." The next morning, I went downstairs and heard Mom talking on the phone, her voice low but crystal clear. "She just needs to sign and it's done. The adoptive family has all the paperwork ready." I stood behind the doorway, gripping the cold wall, feeling like a stranger in my own life. I stepped back slowly and returned to my room, heart heavy as if I were carrying a boulder. Now it was clear, Mom didn't just want me to give the baby to Claire. She was quietly preparing to hand the baby to someone else, if I refused to comply. I opened my drawer, took out the medical records and the first ultrasound photo. I taped it to the wall right above my desk, so that every morning when I woke up, it would be the first thing I saw. No more secrets. My baby deserved to be seen, to be recognized. That afternoon, I got a message from Amelia. "Be careful. If they try to take custody, they may claim you're mentally unstable." I read it over and over, chills racing down my spine. Because I knew Mom was capable of doing exactly that. And she had never tolerated losing. Claire brought home pastries from my favorite bakery and set them on my desk. "You like the lemon ones, right?" I looked at her, her smile as bright and carefree as a summer morning. And I wondered, did she know anything? Or was she just another pawn in Mom's game? I tested the waters. "Claire, if I told you I was pregnant, how would you feel?" She widened her eyes, her mouth opening slightly in surprise. "Wait, seriously, I'd be happy. But why don't you look happy?" I forced a smile, but my throat was tight. I couldn't speak. Her joy was so innocent, so pure, it made me feel like a criminal. Because I knew, if she ever learned the whole truth, that joy might turn to bitterness. That night I wrote, "Baby, I'm starting to feel like a stranger in my own home. Every step I take, I wonder who's watching, who's plotting. But I promise, if I have to, I'll leave this place, so you can be born under your mother's name." The next day, as I stepped out of my room, I found Mom sitting in the living room with a strange woman. She was well-dressed, professional, holding a black folder and wearing a smile far too polite to be reassuring. "Hello," she said. "I'm an adoption counselor. Your mother mentioned you needed support making a decision." I stood frozen, like the air around me had thickened and wrapped around my throat. Mom hadn't asked me. She hadn't warned me. She had made yet another life-altering decision, without me. I looked at her and tried to keep my voice calm. "You should have asked me before putting me in this position." The woman opened the folder, revealing pictures of a smiling couple. "You don't need to sign anything today. This is just a conversation. They're a loving couple, struggling with infertility." I stopped listening. The baby in that photo wasn't mine. I walked away silently, straight to my room, locked the door. No tears, no yelling, just silence. Because I knew if I showed any emotion, they'd say I was unstable, unfit, just like they always did. I opened the drawer and pulled out the ultrasound papers, the diary pages, and a tiny white baby onesie I'd bought secretly on a quiet walk. It had a little elephant on it and the words, "Mommy's little miracle." I held it tight against my belly, imagining you smiling back at me from the warm dark. That night, I went downstairs to get some water and overheard Mom and Claire talking in the kitchen. "She's not okay, Mom. Lately she's been acting really strange, like she's hiding something." Mom was quiet for a few seconds, then softly replied, "I know, but your sister won't have any other choice." I turned around and climbed the stairs step by step, like someone who had completely lost their sense of direction. It became crystal clear. Mom was building a future where I wasn't the mother, but my baby still existed in it. They weren't trying to ask for my consent anymore. They were planning to take the baby, no matter what it cost. I sat at my desk, turned on the warm yellow light, and gripped my green journal like it was the last anchor keeping me steady. On a fresh page, I wrote, "My love, if I have to leave, will you be scared?" "I will be, but I'm more afraid of letting you grow up inside a lie." The next morning, I packed a few clothes, a couple of books, my ultrasound records, and that green journal. I didn't tell anyone. I just left a note. "I need time to think. Don't call. Don't look for me." I caught the earliest bus to Rachel's, the only place where I felt I wouldn't be judged. Rachel opened the door looking confused, but the moment she saw my swollen eyes, she didn't ask a single question. She just hugged me tight, like a warm blanket around a heart that had been torn open. "I knew it," she whispered. "I already got the guest room ready for you." It was a small room with a single bed, a comforter printed with skies and stars, like something for a child. Rachel set down a cup of hot cocoa and a handwritten note on the desk. "This is your safe space. Just breathe." I sat on the bed, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I didn't have to hold everything in. That afternoon, Rachel took me to meet with Amelia at her office. I brought all the documents and laid them on the table like a silent plea. Amelia flipped through each page, then said slowly, "They have no legal right to decide for you, but you need to be prepared if they try to force you." I asked, "What if they say I'm not fit to raise a child?" Amelia looked at me, her eyes serious but kind. "You don't have to be perfect, you just have to be a mother, and prove you love your child with truth, not forged paperwork. I nodded, pressing my lips together like I was trying to swallow the fear rising in my throat. That night, I called Claire. She answered after a few rings, her voice soft as breath. "Where are you? Mom's really worried." I took a deep breath and said slowly, "I'm not okay, Claire, and I think you should know, I'm pregnant." There was silence on the other end, long like free-falling through empty space. Then she asked, so quietly I almost didn't catch it. "Is it your baby, or is it supposed to be mine?" I closed my eyes. The tears came, not from anger, but from the ache of loving her too much. I said, "It's mine, Claire, and I can't give it to anyone, not even you." She didn't respond. Just the sound of shaky breathing, like someone trying to hold together something already breaking. I hung up, not to shut her out, but to protect the one thing that hadn't yet been twisted. The real love between two women, one sister, one mother-to-be. That night, I lay on the small bed in Rachel's house, still holding the green journal close to my chest like I was shielding my child from being taken. I couldn't sleep. Claire's question played over and over in my head. Is it supposed to be mine? She hadn't been angry, just full of hope. A hope I was about to crush. The next morning, I got a text from Mom. "Come home now, stop making this worse." Then a missed call from an unknown number, followed by another message. "If you run away, I'll handle this differently." I didn't know what differently meant, but my mind raced with 100 awful possibilities. Rachel saw my face turn pale and quickly pulled me into a chair. "Don't panic. You have a lawyer, you have me. You're not alone anymore." I nodded, trying to swallow the lump in my throat, because what I feared most was being declared unfit to be a mother. That afternoon, Amelia helped me send an official notice to Mom and Claire that I had full legal rights to raise my child, and any attempt to pressure or override that would be unlawful. My hand trembled as I signed it, but inside, a small part of me started to feel grounded. Not long after, Claire called again. This time, her voice was different. Quieter, wearier. "I didn't know things were like this. Mom said you didn't want the baby, that you were unstable." I stayed silent for a few seconds, then replied, "No, Claire, I never said that. I'm just overwhelmed, because Mom won't let me have a choice." There was a tiny sob on the other end, and then Claire whispered, "I just wanted to be a mother, even just once in my life." I sat frozen, hurting so much I didn't know whether I was mourning for her or for myself. I took a deep breath and spoke slowly. "I understand, but this is my only child too, and I want to be a mother at least once in my life as well." Between us, a long silence stretched. Heavy, like two women standing on opposite riverbanks, each holding onto the same stream of tears. And I knew neither of us could cross over without losing something essential. After the call, I opened my green journal and wrote, "Today, your grandmother threatened to take you from me. Your aunt cried because she can't have a child. And your mother shook with fear just to say, 'You are mine.'" I put down the pen, then added one last line. "My child, if I have to hold on to you with tears, I will." The next day, I received an email from the local law office, signed under my mother's name. The subject line read, "Notice of Psychological Evaluation and Assessment of Fetal Care Environment." I read every word as a chill spread across my scalp. My mother was truly trying to prove I was unfit to be a mother. Rachel walked in while I was still frozen in front of the screen, my shoulders trembling like I'd just been pushed off a cliff. "They've started, haven't they?" she asked, voice low and sharp like a blade. I nodded, unable to speak, my throat glued shut with fear. Amelia arrived that very afternoon, bringing 2 response documents. "We're going to prove you're fully stable. More importantly, you have witnesses, records, a clear employment history. And them? If they're abusing power to force their daughter to give up her child, then they're the ones who need their morals questioned." I sat at the table flipping through pages that were supposed to prove I deserved to exist. It felt like I was being tested just to reclaim my right to be human. I never imagined motherhood could require defending yourself like you're on trial. But Amelia's eyes, calm, unwavering, made me feel like I wasn't alone in this siege anymore. That night, Claire sent me a message. Just a photo. A tiny white baby onesie that said, "Welcome home, Mommy." Underneath was her message. "I ordered this a while ago. I thought it would be mine." I burst into tears, soundless, choking sobs, like when you're a child with a fever and no one comes to soothe you. I wanted to hate her, but I couldn't. She wasn't cruel, just desperate enough to believe love could come from someone else's sacrifice. I picked up my phone and replied, "Claire, I know you're hurting, but so am I, and we can't heal by hurting each other." After I sent it, I didn't expect a response. I just hoped she'd understand. Some wounds, if you try to fill them with another soul, won't close. They'll bleed forever. I wrote in my journal, "Today, your grandmother tried to prove I'm unstable, and your aunt believes I'm unworthy. I'm not perfect, but I love you with every last honest piece I have left." I taped that page above my bed, so that every morning when I woke up, I'd remember who I was fighting for. 3 days later, I received a court summons. A preliminary hearing to determine whether my living situation was suitable for carrying a child. I held the letter, my hands trembling, heart pounding so hard it felt like it might leap out of my chest. They were really turning me into a defendant. Just because I wanted to keep my own child. Amelia scheduled a meeting that same afternoon to prepare our counter-evidence. She looked deep into my eyes and said, "They're using the law to control emotions, but the law will also protect you, if you stand tall." I nodded slowly, like I had just stepped into a battle that was far bigger than motherhood. That night, I cleaned the room Rachel had lent me, wiping down the windowsill, folding clothes, and preparing a tiny corner for Bean. I laid out the baby blanket, placed the first stuffed bear I'd ever bought, and rested my green journal beside it. It was just a small space, but it was the first place my baby could call home. I got a message from one of my aunts on my mom's side. "Are you okay? Your mom's telling a different story. I just want to hear from you." I took a photo of the corner I'd set up and replied, "I'm trying to become a mother, and no one else can do that in my place." She didn't answer right away, but a few minutes later, a message popped up. "I believe in you." The next morning, Claire called again. Her voice was tired, slow, like someone who hadn't slept all night. "I talked to Mom and I'm sorry." I didn't dare respond at first, afraid that anything I said might make her retreat again. She continued, "I didn't know she'd taken it this far. I just thought if I never had a child, I'd never be a whole woman." I closed my eyes, and the tears came without needing permission. I understood that pain, but I couldn't let it destroy my own motherhood. "I don't hate you," I said, my voice shaking. "But I can't give my baby to anyone, not even you." She didn't reply, but I heard her breathing, ragged, uneven, like she was learning to accept a dream that would never come true. That night, I wrote in my journal, "Today, your grandmother dragged you into court. But your aunt, she took one step back. Not everyone may stand by us. But sometimes, one person is enough for a mother to stay standing." I placed my hand on my belly, and for the first time, I felt something in my heart beyond fear. I felt gratitude. The hearing took place on a foggy Monday morning. The cold air pierced my skin like a silent warning. I walked into the courtroom, clutching the green journal tightly, as if I were carrying part of my soul beside me. Amelia walked next to me, small in stature but solid as steel. She was the shield I never thought I'd have. My mother had arrived first, sitting in the front row with her arms crossed, her dark coat making her look like a complete stranger. Claire wasn't there, and I didn't know if that made me feel relieved or just empty. Next to my mother sat her private attorney, a rigid man with eyes that held not a single ounce of compassion. Inside the hearing room, everything moved faster than I expected. Their side argued that I had no stable housing, no family support, and was showing signs of emotional instability. They even cited my leaving home without clearly stating the reason, as suspicious behavior. Amelia stood up and methodically refuted each claim. The temporary housing agreement at Rachel's, a mental health statement from an independent psychologist, and a letter confirming I had never shown harmful behavior. Then she read a journal excerpt I had previously approved, a short piece, but one that held nothing back. "I'm not perfect. I'm just a mother who hasn't even held her child yet, but already has to fight for the right to do so." The room went still after that line. I didn't look at my mother. I didn't look at anyone. I just stared at my hands, trembling, but steady. Because no matter the outcome, I knew I hadn't run. At the end of the hearing, the judge declared that, for now, there was no legal basis to interfere with my right to be a mother. A formal hearing would take place later, but I still had full authority over my pregnancy. It felt like I had finally come up for air after nearly drowning in silence. I left the courthouse. It was still cold out, but this time the chill didn't reach my bones. Rachel wrapped me in a hug the moment she saw me step outside, and I broke down like a child. "It's not over," I whispered. "But today, I kept my baby." That night, I opened my journal and wrote slowly. "Today, your grandmother was in court, but she never once looked me in the eye. I don't need to win, I just need to keep you. And today I did." A few days after the hearing, I received a thick envelope from my mother. No note, no handwriting. Just prenatal records, hospital bills, and a pre-drafted document proposing transfer of postnatal custody. As I held it, a chill ran down my spine. She hadn't given up. She was just changing tactics. I brought the envelope to Amelia and placed it on her desk like evidence in a crime case. She skimmed through the contents, then looked up. "They still think if they apply enough pressure, you'll break." I shook my head, this time without trembling, without looking away. "No, maybe my sister doesn't understand, but I do. I'm protecting my child." That afternoon, I called Claire. I couldn't avoid her forever. She was still my blood, still a piece of my childhood. She answered on the third ring, her voice hoarse. "I know, Mom did something again, didn't she?" I was silent for a few seconds, then said, "She sent over a legal custody transfer. Were you involved?" Claire exhaled, long and slow, so long I thought she might have hung up. "No, I didn't agree, but I didn't dare stop her either." And somehow I heard the truth in that. And strangely enough, I wasn't angry. I spoke softly, but firmly. Claire, I need you to understand. This isn't just about being a mother. This is about keeping a piece of my heart safe and not letting anyone rename it. She didn't respond right away. Then she asked, very quietly, "Will you let me see the baby someday?" I cried unashamedly. "Claire, I'm not stealing your child. I'm just trying to keep mine." She let out a quiet sob and said, "I understand. I just need time." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Maybe, despite all the things we'd lost, we could still hold on to something that wouldn't break. That night, I wrote in my journal, "Today, your grandmother tried to rename you and rewrite who your mother is. But your aunt didn't go along with it." A door slammed shut, but a hand still reached out, trembling, but real. The next day, Rachel and I went to a baby store to pick up a few essentials. I chose a soft yellow blanket with a smiling baby deer sleeping on it. Touching the fabric, I felt something loosen in my chest, like my baby was hugging me from the inside. I also bought a small picture frame to place the first ultrasound photo on my nightstand. I wanted to wake up every morning and see that blurry little face, unclear, but already my entire world. Rachel smiled at me and said, "Now you really look like a mom." When we got home, there was a handwritten letter on the doorstep, my mother's handwriting. I opened it. The first line read, "If you don't stop, I will tell the court you are unfit to be a mother." I sat down on the front step, my hands shaking. Not from fear, but from disappointment so deep it chilled my bones. Rachel took the letter, read it once, and tore it to pieces in front of me. "You don't need to carry that poison in your head," she said, her voice as hard as steel. I looked at her, then hugged her tightly. Because sometimes, a friend is your whole family. The next day, Amelia sent an official notice to my mother that any form of threat, manipulation, or coercion would be documented and could result in a counter lawsuit. Reading it, I felt like a shield had finally been raised between me and all the coldness my mother could throw my way. That night, Claire sent me an unexpected message. "I'm sorry for everything. I'll tell Mom I refuse to take custody of the baby. I don't want to hurt you anymore." I read it over and over, my heart tightening with an emotion I couldn't quite name. Maybe she didn't fully understand yet, but at least, she had chosen to step away from the game. I texted back, "Thank you. I hope that someday we'll be able to love each other without having to fight over anything." There was no reply, but that was okay, because sometimes silence is the gentlest form of acceptance. And I felt something inside me begin to lighten. That night, I wrote in my journal, "Today, you officially stopped being a wedding gift. No longer a borrowed hope. No longer a piece of property to be transferred. Today, you're simply my child, and that's enough." A few days later, I began my regular prenatal visits at a new clinic, a place where no one knew who my mother was, and no one looked at me like I was just a vessel. The doctor was an elderly woman with silver-streaked hair and soft eyes, gentle like a grandmother from an old storybook. When the baby's heartbeat echoed clearly through the quiet room, she smiled and said, "Your baby is strong, and you're doing very well." I nodded as tears rolled down my cheeks, unstoppable. I had waited so many weeks just to hear someone say I was doing well. Not well because you sacrificed, but well because you stood your ground for what's right. Back at Rachel's, I took out the new ultrasound photo and pinned it to the corner of my desk. Beneath it, I wrote in black marker, "Bean, Mama will welcome you into this world in her own name." Every time I looked up, I saw the path I'd walked, not needing anyone's validation but yours. That night, I dreamed I was holding Bean in my arms, their hair soft like early morning mist. We were in a park, the breeze gentle, and Claire was sitting on a nearby bench, smiling softly. No one was fighting, no one was hurting. Just 3 people learning how to forgive. When I woke, I wrote, "Today, Mama dreamed of you and of her sister. No tears, just sunlight and wind. Maybe one day the past will just be the foundation for a peaceful beginning." Around noon, I got a message from an unknown number. "I'm a friend of Miss Nancy, your mother. She was hospitalized this morning due to high blood pressure." I froze for a few seconds, heart racing, mind blank. Despite everything she had done, I was still her daughter. Rachel drove me to the hospital. I stood outside her room for a long time before I dared go in. She was lying on her side, eyes closed, one hand resting on her stomach like she was still cradling an old memory. I didn't cry. I just sat down in the chair beside her, quietly, like a shadow she'd once tried to erase. When she opened her eyes, her gaze wasn't angry. It wasn't resentful either. Just tired, and something that looked a lot like regret. I clasped my hands together and said softly, "I didn't come here to argue, Mom. I came because I'm still your daughter." She turned her face away but didn't pull her hand back under the blanket like she usually did when she was angry. I wasn't sure if it was a sign of softening or just exhaustion. But as long as she didn't push me away, I knew I still had a chance to salvage something between us. I sat there for nearly an hour, saying nothing, just breathing in rhythm with the steady beeping of the heart monitor. In that moment, I wasn't a mother being threatened. Wasn't a daughter cast out of her home, just a child sitting beside the woman who once held her through fevered nights. Before I left, I folded a small note and placed it on the bedside table. Inside, I wrote, "You don't need to apologize, just stop hurting me, and if you want, I'll let you meet your grandchild, as a real grandmother." I walked into the hallway with a lighter heart, not because I had forgiven her, but because I hadn't let hatred grow bigger than me. When I got home, Claire was standing at the front door. She was holding a small bag, her hair tied up, face pale from lack of sleep. I heard about Mom. I didn't know where else to go. I just knew I needed to talk to you." I opened the door and let her in. No questions, no blame. She sat on the couch, looked around the small room, then said quietly, "I used to think that just having a baby would make me happy. But now I realize, if that baby doesn't see me as their mother, then everything is just an empty shell." I went still. My heart didn't hurt. It just felt like something tight had been gently squeezed. I nodded slowly and replied, "A child can't be born from a lie. You deserve to be a mother, but not like this." Claire looked at me, her eyes red and watery, and then she said something I didn't expect. "I hope that one day you'll let me tell your baby that I once really wanted to love them." I held her, gently, like she might break. No promises, no conclusions. Just two women who had once been forced into opposite corners, trying to stitch together a tear neither of them had made. And in that moment, I believed, some wounds may never fully heal, but we can still keep living, together. The next morning, Claire and I went to the hospital to visit Mom again. We didn't plan it, didn't agree on a time, we just happened to arrive at the same moment, as if blood still carried a shared rhythm. Mom was lying on her side, eyes open, looking at both of us with a gaze no longer as cold as before. Claire stepped forward first and placed a small bouquet on the bedside table. "Lavender, your favorite. I thought, maybe the scent could help you sleep better." Mom didn't speak, but her fingers shifted slightly on the bedsheet, as if trying to hold on to something. I slowly stepped to the other side of the bed and said gently, "Mom, I'll raise my baby on my own, but if you want, I won't stop you from being a grandmother." The air in the room thickened, like everyone was holding their breath, waiting for something. Then Mom slowly reached out and touched my wrist, lightly. "As long as you don't disappear like your father did, I'll learn how to start over." I turned to look at Claire. She had turned her face away, but her shoulders were trembling. Mom didn't apologize, but for the first time, she didn't deny the pain she'd caused. And sometimes, a single touch is enough to begin something new. Back in my small room at Rachel's house, I sat by the window and looked at the clear blue sky. I wrote in my journal, "Today you have a grandmother. Not perfect, not gentle, but real. And you also have an aunt, who once wanted to call you her own, out of desperate longing, but chose to let go." The days slowed down. I kept going to my prenatal checkups, carefully recording every change in my body. The doctor said the baby was developing well, a strong heartbeat, no complications. I listened and just clenched my hands, because every beat of that tiny heart was a life I had fought to keep with all my will. One afternoon, I received a small package from an anonymous sender. Inside was a pale blue newborn outfit and a card with just 3 words. "For your courage." I held the gift to my chest, eyes misty. Maybe, just maybe, there are still people out there silently standing with mothers like me. That evening, Rachel invited me to sit on the porch. 2 mugs of hot cocoa, a sky full of stars. "You're about to give birth," she said, smiling. "And I believe this baby will be grateful, not because you were perfect, but because you didn't abandon them." I nodded, my eyes gazing upward, toward the countless stars silently witnessing all my promises. Before bed, I wrote, "Today you have a grandmother, an aunt, a mother, and a friend who carried half the sky for me when I fell. Someday when you're grown, if you ask, 'Mom, how did you manage to keep me?' I'll just hand you this journal." A week later, the doctor told me it was time to start preparing for labor. It might happen a few days earlier than expected. I stepped out of the clinic with one hand on my belly, the other clutching the ultrasound schedule, heart fluttering, not with fear anymore, but with an eager, breathless joy, like I was about to reunite with someone I loved after a lifetime apart. Rachel had everything ready. The hospital bag packed, the car full of gas, a baby car seat installed, and even an oversized hoodie for me to wear on the ride home. "You're not just giving birth to a baby," she said. "You're giving birth to yourself, into a mother, a warrior." I smiled, but my throat tightened, because it was true. I wasn't the same woman I had been just a few months ago. That night, Claire came over with a small bag. These are things I started knitting back when I still believed the baby was mine. I opened the bag to find a tiny, unfinished beanie, and a pair of half-knit socks in soft ash gray, so gentle in color. I looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't see someone who had hurt me. I saw someone who had lost something deep and quiet. "I can finish them if you'd like," I said softly. Claire nodded, eyes red. "If you do, then your baby will know they were born into love, so much love." That night, I sat down and finished knitting the tiny socks. Each click of the needles in the quiet night felt like mending. Some long-torn fabric between two sisters. I placed the socks on the desk, beside my green journal. And for the first time, I felt like this story was finally being stitched back together, by my own hands. The next day, I returned to the hospital for another checkup. The doctor said I was already nearly 2 centimeters dilated. Everything's progressing naturally. Your body's cooperating beautifully, she smiled. I gently touched my belly and whispered, "You're trying your best too, aren't you, Bean?" On the way home, I stopped at a nearby park. The same one where I'd once dreamed of holding my baby. I sat on an old wooden bench, hand resting on my belly, feeling each little kick from the life inside me. Around me, kids were laughing. Mothers pushed strollers. And for the first time, I didn't feel like a stranger in that world. That night, Rachel held me for a long time before bed. "Everything's going to be okay, even if it's not perfect," she whispered. And I understood then. Sometimes happiness isn't having everything. It's no longer fearing the loss of what you love most. I opened my journal and wrote the final line of the pregnancy chapter. "Today, you and I are ready. I'm no longer hiding you from the world. And if anyone asks me, do you regret it? I'll say, not for a single moment." 3 days later, at 3 a.m., I was jolted awake by a dull ache low in my abdomen. At first, it felt like someone gently twisting something inside me, but then the pain grew more rhythmic, deeper, sharper, until I had to sit up straight in bed. I placed a hand on my belly and whispered into the dark, "Is that you, baby? Are you coming to me now?" Rachel woke up the moment I stepped out of my room. Her sleepy face sharpened into alertness in less than a second. "Are you okay? Is this it? Should we go to the hospital?" I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. "I think it's time." The car ride to the hospital was quiet, only the sound of the wheels rolling over damp pavement. I stared out the foggy window, my mind a blur of pain and emotion. This journey had been longer than I expected, but now, I was about to hold the result of everything I had fought to protect. At the delivery ward, the doctor checked and told me I was already 6 centimeters dilated. It was progressing quickly. I clenched my teeth through each contraction, sweat running down my spine, my hand gripping the bed rail without letting go. Rachel stood beside me, holding my hand tightly, as if pouring all her remaining strength into my palm. The pain peaked just as dawn began to break. I screamed, not from weakness, but because I had carried too many nameless things inside me for too long. And in that scream, I heard myself being born again. When Bean's first cry rang out, I broke down in tears, my throat tight, as if I had just released a century's worth of waiting. They laid the baby on my chest, a tiny, warm, trembling bundle of red life, but alive. I looked down at my child, eyes shut tight, a tiny hand grasping at the air, and I whispered, "Hi there, I'm your mom." Rachel cried. The nurse smiled. The doctor gave a soft nod. Everyone said congratulations. But I didn't hear any of it, only the heartbeat of my baby, beating in time with mine. It felt like the universe had collapsed into just the two of us, two planets finally finding each other after countless seasons of being lost. I held my baby for the entire first hour. No talking, no phones, no thoughts of Mom or Claire. No memories could pierce that moment. Only the present, only that tiny breath, steady and pure. I realized then, I had lived my entire life waiting for this exact moment. Before the nurse took the baby to be cleaned, I whispered into that tiny ear, "You're not anyone's gift. You're the answer to every time I thought I wasn't strong enough." And I knew, from that second on, I would never again need permission to be a mother. I stayed in the hospital for 2 more days after giving birth, just to monitor our health. Both Bean and I were stable. Every time the nurse brought my baby back into the room, I felt like I was reclaiming something that had once been taken from me, but this time under the truest name, Mother. I held my child to my chest, looked down at that little face, and realized I had never loved anything this much. On discharge day, Rachel drove us home. In the back seat, Bean was sound asleep in a little carrier draped with a pale yellow blanket. We didn't say much, just exchanged tired but content smiles now and then. The little house I once saw as just a temporary shelter had now truly become the first home for me and my baby. That afternoon, I got a text from Claire. "You're back? Is the baby okay?" I sent her a photo, Bean sleeping soundly, tiny hand curled near the edge of the blanket, chubby cheek resting gently. She replied with just 2 words, "Thank you." And I knew that wasn't just for today, but for all the silent days before. That evening, I heard a knock at the door. When I opened it, it was Mom. No flowers, no gifts, no cold eyes. Just an older woman standing quietly with empty hands, and a gaze no longer filled with anger. I stepped aside to let her in. She asked softly, "Can I see the baby just for a moment?" I nodded and led her to the room, where Bean slept in the cradle, breathing steadily like gentle waves on a quiet shore. She stood still for a long time, then slowly bent over and reached out, fingers trembling as they barely touched the edge of the blanket. He looks like your father. No one said anything after that. I didn't ask for an apology. She didn't try to rewrite the past. And in that moment, I realized some kinds of love don't need words, just someone willing to show up. I knew then, even if late, my mother was learning how to love again, not through control, but through letting go. That night, I wrote the final page of my green journal. Today you have a name. Not mine. Not anyone else's. Just your own. And at the bottom of the page, I signed, Mom. Not a role. Not a borrowed title. But something real, made of blood and tears and truth. I sat watching Bean sleep in my arms, the soft glow of the nightlight shining on that tiny red face, his fine golden hair glinting like silk. Each gentle rise and fall of my baby's chest felt like a quiet reminder, you kept me, and I'm here. I didn't know how the world out there would receive my child, but I did know, in these arms, they would be loved the right way. I placed my baby in the crib, carefully tucked in the blanket, then sat down by the window and reopened the green journal that had stayed with me through the entire pregnancy. The last page was still blank, its edges slightly yellowed where tears had once smudged the paper. I picked up the pen. My hand no longer trembled. My sweet child, I kept you with everything I had, not because I'm perfect, but because I couldn't let anyone else write my name into your life in my place. And if one day you ask why I chose to keep you, when everyone else said I should let you go, this is your answer. Because you are real, and so is my love. The next morning, I was surprised to get a message from Claire. Can I come visit the baby? Just for a little while. I won't ask for anything. I almost said no. But then I thought, if I had fought to keep my child, then she had the right to step out of her own hurt too. I said yes. Claire arrived looking pale and worn, holding an old teddy bear, the one I used to sleep with when I was little. I found it in the attic, she said. It used to be yours, but I think it should be Bean's now. I looked at the bear, just an old stuffed toy, but in her hands, it felt like she was giving me back a piece of the childhood that had been rewritten. She leaned over the crib and whispered, Hi, little one. I'm sorry I ever tried to turn you into the wrong kind of dream. I didn't say a word, but in my heart, something heavy began to melt. I knew she had let go, and this time, no one had to lose for someone else to win. That afternoon, my mother came by unannounced. She didn't look at me, didn't greet her grandchild. She simply placed a small fabric pouch on the table. Inside were the ultrasound photos I thought she had thrown away. Then she turned to leave, saying only one thing. I didn't know how to love right, but I know you did. I stood there, holding Bean in my arms, watching the woman who once terrified me walk out the door. No more tears, no more anger, just one truth, clearer than ever. I never needed anyone's permission to be a mother, because I claimed it with everything I had. I sat down at the table, opened the last page of the green journal once more, and wrote, Today, you are no longer a prize in a battle between adults. You are the child of a mother who chose not to back down. And I know, no one can take away what I've held onto with blood, with tears, and with love that asks for no approval. I closed the journal. Sunlight poured through the window, landing softly on Bean's tiny face as they shifted in sleep. I kissed their forehead and whispered, Welcome to this world, and thank you for choosing me even when I was nearly denied the right to keep you. For the first time in my life, I no longer felt small. What would you do if your own mother told you to give up your baby, so your sister could become a mom instead? Tell me, I'll read every comment. Because this story isn't just mine.